Welcome to Dialogue Out Loud Interviews. My name is Margaret Olsen Hemming, and I'm the art editor at Dialogue, a journal of Mormon thought. Today, I'm here with one of the artists whose art can be found in the winter 2023 issue of the journal. Jamal Qureshi is an American Norwegian artist who lives in Norway, and we're going to hear a little bit about his work. This is the piece that you find on the cover called Nephi's Psalm is his only sort of work that has gone out into the world and become well known. He's not a professional artist, but I think this piece is pretty extraordinary. And so if you can look it up and be sure you're looking at it, we're going to have an interesting conversation about the Psalm of Nephi. Jamal Qureshi, welcome to Dialogue Out Loud.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell me about your work as an amateur artist and how you got into digital artwork.
I'm a tinkerer, I suppose. I suppose I'm a bit more of a person with kind of a blend of technical and more sort of soft topic issues that I'm in. So I studied Arabic at BYU and in Cairo as well at American University of Cairo. I've spent a good chunk of my life in the Middle East as well. Half my family is Muslim. My father is Pakistani, so half the family is. Call ourselves a Muslim family. So I just kind of always had this interest in sort of Islamic arts, obviously a deep interest in the gospel. And actually, it was right there. I was 10th grade one day, learning some new skills, and the idea just sort of popped in my head. I could put something together like this. One of the things, though, that happened was I don't have any particular, I guess, technical skills as an artist. But I had sort of the concept of what I wanted to do, so I just kind of went thinking, what are the tools I could use that I actually know I can use? So the whole thing was actually put together in Microsoft Word.
Really?
Yeah. So it was kind of an odd project in a way. But I was able to get it to do what I wanted it to do. Right, and then had some very nice sort of fine art quality, thanks to the G-Play printer. But that was just pure genesis of it. The Soul of Nephi is a piece of script here that's always stood out to me, and I've always loved Arabic calligraphy. And so I just, kind of had this vision that kind of evolved, and I could put something together, and I did. So it's no fancy story about it.
So this is, you're using traditional Arabic or Muslim, I should say, traditional Muslim art with Arabic lettering. Is that right?
Yeah, it's all in Arabic.
It's all in Arabic, and you have is it the complete psalm?
Yes. Yeah, it was to take a check from the Book of Mormon.
Okay. And then there are some other words on there as well, right?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, it's been over 20 years. So part of me is sort of like, I'm not sure how well it's aged in my own mind.
Okay.
But it's been great. A lot of people love it. But what I did was I took a very straightforward example from Ottoman architecture, where if you're going to a large Ottoman mosque and you look up into the ceiling, you've got the dome, and then in each corner of the dome, you'll have these other discs, sort of as the transition zone to the broader building. And on those discs, they put the names of the more, what we call the caliphs, the successors to Muhammad, as, just sort of the sign of, those who sort of help Islam propagate well. And those were the four sort of caliphs, the rightly guided ones. So you have this traditional style. So I just sort of took that and said, okay, similar principle. I put together the four names of the people who would say were responsible for making sure we had this all. And then in the center of the very large lettering, it just says Allah, God.
Wow. I think it's just incredible. And so I believe the four names in the corners are Nephi, Lehi, Mormon, and Joseph?
I believe Moroni.
Moroni and Joseph. Okay. And then Allah in the center.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and I just think it's so striking with the gold against the blue. Visually it's just beautiful, and then you dig down into these layers of identity that you have brought to it, and to me there's just nothing else like it in Mormon art. So thank you for sharing it. So you grew up in the United States, spent lots of time in the Middle East as well, and now you live in Norway?
Yeah, I've been really peripatetic. So born in Colorado, I was a year old. We moved to Saudi Arabia. I was there till I was 10. Came back to the States, grew up in Colorado, to the middle school, high school, went to the Y, started mission in the UK, came back, finished at the Y, moved to Egypt for a year after I got married. Then we lived in DC for, what was that, 7 years. New York for a while, then to Norway, in southern Norway and Svalbard, 5 years, came back to the States, and then moved up to Svalbard, Norwegian Arctic territory. Been around a few places.
Wow. And you were telling me earlier that you are currently in the northernmost town in the world.
Yes, it's a town called Longyearbyen. So yeah, we live on this island archipelago that's part of Norway called Svalbard. And it's the set of islands halfway between the top of Norway, top of Europe, and the North Pole. So I think we're about as close to the North Pole as we are to Norway.
Wow. So normally at this point in the interview, we talk about, how people became artists and how their art figures in the context of sort of current Mormon context and discussions. You are unusual in being, an amateur artist for our cover. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you spend your time day to day. What brought you to this archipelago?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, like Mike, maybe you'll add a little bit of a background that I think was important to how this came about too. Like I said, I have lived a significant portion of my life in the Middle East. That my family is Muslim. So I've been, I think, very invested and cared a great deal about some of the church in the Middle East. Historically, current and going forward. So, I've been involved tangentially in a lot of the developments of the church in the region for many decades now. And, there was a time, especially if you go back 20 years and more, you can almost count on one hand the number of Arab members in the church. I exaggerate a bit, but, it was a small group, and I knew a lot of those folks. It has grown, thankfully, positively, though still small. But a large portion of my life has been very, very focused on that and dedicated and caring about how the church goes in the links in the lodge, my friends, the thing they go through. So I've got this personal connection that I really care about. That's been a big part of my life. So the fact that I've been very tied to sort of Middle Eastern Arab and broader Muslim culture, that has done something for me where I try to see a certain harmony in this. Um, it's obviously very easy when you grow up in the church to have a fairly narrow view of the world. And I say that not sort of disparaging folks, because I grew up for a large portion of life in sort of that world too. It's not a negative thing in that it's, powerful community, all those wonderful things about the church, being able to plug into the church and where to go. At the same time, I think sometimes we forget that we are 0.1% or so of the world. So seeing, I think, how the gospel can tie in and relate to other cultures, because at the end of the day, the restored gospel is not about, the culture we formed. The culture we formed in the church came about for perfectly good reasons, historical, people came from certain places, and formed that way. But it is just a moment in time, culturally speaking, that we created. And the restored gospel is something that fits into, the much broader world. Certainly, if it's going to continue to grow and spread, it needs to be tied to the broader world in much greater ways. And, we're seeing that develop, and obviously go back, especially to, for instance, McKay and moving forward as the church really internationalized after the war. We've seen more of that, but we got to come in fits and starts. We kind of kick back sometimes, that's going a little too far. So there's some growing pains. So for me, just with the background I've had, I was trying to create something that could kind of blend back and show how things could fit into that larger culture, how it could blend into the Middle East, just like artists are doing things with, Chinese calligraphy and art, right? I mean, you did. This came out as part of the church's international art competition. And that, I think, has been a perfect example too, what I'm talking about more broadly. I think it's just absolutely one of the most wonderful things the church has done culturally. You go to those competitions, and okay, yes, there's a lot of very traditional Utah American, sure. There is such a great inclusion of just pieces from all over the world, all different cultures. And it's been great too to see how some of that now is leading into official church usage and just sort of cultural usage of the church.
Right. They're actually using the artists instead of just having them in the competition.
Exactly. And I think this is all part of the church too, kind of going from a place where maybe we're still in a little bit of a bunker mentality. Because there was a purpose to correlation and all these things, trying to unify things. A fast-growing church needs some standardization. I get that. There was a real weight to that. And now the church is realizing, okay, I think we need to broaden our horizons. But you have to do it in a way that doesn't just kind of blow everything apart. Larger organization needs to be sensitive to where people are at, as well as where we want to go. So I think this kind of art that the church has been encouraging, it's a really powerful way to do that. I sent my piece in thinking anything. I might just thought, there's people. I mean, it was hard to, I put it together, but I also did think serious of it. So it was actually recognized. That was nice. The fact that there could be something unique like that without backgrounds that people can see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the background. Right? I'm very tight. As far as who I am beyond that, how we wound up in Svalbard.
Hold on for just 1 minute. Tell me more about, you are operating in a fairly unusual space here, with, you were saying there are very few members of the church in the Middle East. From your perspective, what would you like to see the church do, or the church, or the sort of Mormon art world do, not just to be more sensitive to being a global church, but specific to the Middle East? Like, what would you imagine in a more perfect world?
Well, the Dubai Temple is such an opportunity. Yeah, it's incredible. And I have to say that one just absolutely flabbergasted and blew me away when that was announced. I mean, that was just something you never could dream of. It was so far beyond what seemed remotely possible. Mm-hmm. And even now, it's a bold step to take it where things are at, but it makes a lot of sense. So I think that's a wonderful example that can be used artistically to sort of encourage, some artistic expression that can be brought and utilized there, whether it's in the architecture or the artwork that's inside or the detailing. I think those are that's a great opportunity that can be utilized and to sort of take in, when we talk about, again, the church kind of needing to broaden horizons and perspectives a bit. I mean, the Middle East has such a rich artistic and architectural heritage. It's incredible. And in many ways, this is not the church showing up in the Middle East. This is the church returning to the Middle East.
Right.
I mean, that is the true roots of the church historically. Exactly. It's a homecoming, right? In many ways. So I think it's an opportunity to take that to maybe, get some artistic expression out of that. So how exactly that works, how the church taps into that, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, whether that's church members who are, connected to the region and live there or whatever, and, are artists and utilizing them to art too. And then there's many people too who've had some exposure as well, very talented artists. And as well, a lot of this, right? I think a lot of good art is beauty, and tying together the different things. I think we've seen that a bit more in sort of temple architecture too over the past couple decades or so. Which again is kind of going back to our roots, right? Because when the church was in the early days, right, what did we have? I mean, some of the old Utah architecture just, right, it's wonderful when wards and states were building their own buildings. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot more, and raising their own money to do it, building it by land, right? They brought in a lot of their sort of
local art and
exactly.
And all of that.
Exactly. And the church has been using more of that, I think, in different places around the world. I love the Tijuana temple. I think it's lovely. It's got that colonial Spanish architecture, really well executed. The designs for the temple in India as well are looking interesting. Thailand, Cambodia, right? It's still recognizably sort of a modern LDS temple, but sort of pulling in some of those elements. And then occasionally you get an interesting outlier too. So the one I always point to for sort of Islamic architecture is the Portland temple. I mean, take Moroni off that and show that to any Muslim, they'll assume it's a mosque. It's really well executed. So I think that is, the kind of thing that the church has its bureaucracy for temples. I think I probably have too enough church bureaucrats to know that yes, they can get sucked into the bureaucracy and personal issues of any workplace, things like that. But also, people, for the most part, they're very dedicated and care about what they're doing. Mm. So then bureaucratic process can be infused, with the opportunities for people who really care to pull in more of that art and localization, and specifically in the Middle East. I think that would be really wonderful. And maybe if the church reaches out to specifically to different regions with the international art competition, I don't know if there's much outreach per se. It's just kind of organically grown. But maybe especially for areas of the church where we haven't seen as much, the church I don't know, kind of reaches out to artists. That could be a positive thing as well. Organic things will grow as they grow, when there's not a market or an official purpose, people will kind of do their thing. But when the church doing things come through official channels as well, I think it can be a powerful tool to encourage that.
Huh. Yeah, I would second. I think it would be very exciting to have local artists consulted even more than they are. Like thinking about the temple that made a big impact on me was the one in Accra, Ghana, where they used local textile patterns for the stained glass windows. And I thought that had such an impact of helping local people feel at home in this space. Like this is a building for you. So yeah, I think all of those ideas are really, really wonderful.
And it's not just temples. Temples are sort of a shining beacon, but again, we've used cookie cutter churches for a long time, and they definitely serve the purpose. And I don't know that the church could have grown at the pace it did if we hadn't had some standardization like that. But I think there's an increasing opportunity to go back to, again, localizing more of these things. So, yeah, not just temples, but chapels and art used in them, and, the Leon inserts that come in different regions, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think your piece here, the Psalm of Nephi, really speaks to the power of, an individual identity, bringing in all of these parts that many people in the world might see as incompatible, and producing something that is, just extremely powerful and beautiful.
Yeah. That's been a funny thing too. It's just, having the life I had, I'm sure plenty of people that had very international backgrounds, right? And they lived in lots of different places and had lots of culture exposure kind of thing. I was really glad that while I did that a portion of that was growing up in a very traditional LDS sort of way for part of my upbringing, right? I grew up in Colorado from when I was 10 to when I went off to the line. And so, it was typical sort of suburban ward out west. It was good in that, it wasn't a majority LDS place, but our high school was probably 5% LDS. So we had a good, strong community. So that felt very, very normal to me, right? But, being around my Pakistani family felt very, very normal as well. And so, as I've seen sort of people come from that background, the sort of very normal LDS backgrounds that I had as well, and I see a lot of the misconceptions and the prejudices that a lot of people have, against Muslims. And sometimes it's not like a super negative thing. It's just that they've grown up with this stereotype in the background, and so they just have certain assumptions. They don't even think about it. There's no ill will behind it, but there are some negative stereotypes there.
Right. They're living in the water of it.
Exactly. And I will say this, for the most part, church members, though, are actually much more understanding for the most part. American politics of the last few years has unfortunately weakened that. But in general, I think it's always held. And this is the thing, right? American church members, right, lean heavily conservative. They swim in that sea, but, a different kind of conservative has been pointed out in lots of political analysis, right? There's a greater practicality, there's a greater openness to the world, greater experience with the world, a greater sense of where to accomplish something as a community. whereas just a lot of people I've known who aren't members of the church have no church members. So like, just that stereotype of Mormons. So I guess when I've been in that situation where I've known people though who just have these stereotypes and negative prejudices, not because they've nursed any negative feelings, but because, like you say, they just remain the same. To me, it's like, it makes, I understand why they have it, and simultaneously it makes no sense to me. Because, I live in these worlds, they are not opposed. They're not remotely opposed. These things mesh together perfectly well, right? And of course there are differences, but give an example of this. We were just at a wedding in Utah, earlier last year now. And so, we had all these church members, different places and stuff. But my father was there, Pakistan, and my half-sister. She's Muslim, she wears hijab, the whole deal. She's very stereotypical American Muslim. There is a whole sort of American Muslim generational subculture too, which is actually very, very similar to LDS culture in many ways. And so she was there. I was there with my sister, and we were talking, and all of a sudden I'm explaining the temple to her because she was curious. Okay, so what actually goes on in there? I'm explaining things. I'm actually giving kind of an overview of, okay, what's the endowment of the ceilings, things like this, and pointing out some of the architecture and all of that. And she's just like, oh, wow, that's just like this angel in Islam. Oh, yeah, that's just like what we do when we go on Hajj, right? There are so many sort of base principles which most people can relate to, right? And, okay, we have clear differences theologically, understanding of who we are, where we come from, all installation, all that, and there's differences. But fundamentally, and I wouldn't just apply this to Islam. I would apply this to pretty much any religion out there. Fundamentally, we're not looking at the world and sort of our humanity fundamentally in different ways, right? There's this idea that obviously when you're in one culture and the other, when the other guy just looks like the green-eyed monster, and you get down to the base of it, and you're like, no, you've got the same basic feelings. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, then, well, what's really different? Well, obviously there are differences. And in my mind, it comes back to simply in believing, okay, what do you think is the reality of the truth? What's actually happening? That's not meant to be, you're so wrong and I'm so right. It's just like, to me, it's almost like physics, there are laws of physics, You cannot like some of the results of it, but they are what they are, right? And the purpose of the short gospel is to help people get through it, right? Go through. And okay, somebody's got a different religion, faith, or belief. I think it's physics are different than you do, okay? But everybody's trying to figure out physics. And so we don't, need to sit back and say these things are fundamentally compatible. It's just, it's a different way of trying to get at the answer.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's really beautiful. So just quickly, before we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in an archipelago north of Sweden? North of Norway.
Yes. And Svalbard is technically a part of Norway. So no, we started a family business here several years ago. And sort of from here as a tourist 11 years ago, 10.5 years ago now. Svalbard has this sort of mythical place in the Norwegian world. When I was a kid, I'd visit Norway every year, but I never got up to the far north. And then Svalbard, something even further way out there, right? So I had a chance to visit about 10 years ago for the first time, and just fell in love with this place. It's so so different. Look, it's like a moonscape up here. Just glaciers and Arctic deserts. Interestingly, the geology of the landscape actually reminds me a lot of southern Utah. Very similar. Mm-hmm. Got a mountain overlooking the town that I always call Svalbard's Mount Timpanogos. Looks very similar in village. So I came up here for the first time, fell in love with the place, and without telling a very, very long story, at the end of the day, we had a business. So we, for several years, ran a company called Svalbard. It's basically a luxury bottled water. So it was a really unique product. We did that for several years. At the end of the day, various circumstances, we closed the company. But we've been up here 7 years. Well, we just decided to stay from the time being. My wife and I both work remotely, and she actually works for a company in Utah, of all things. We have a son at a university in the north of Norway as well, in the mainland, so we can experience.
Wow. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, and just offered such an interesting perspective here that I think is, quite different from any artist we've had before. So thank you for sharing your art with Dialogue Journal, and thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your work and your thoughts about, issues of culture and your experiences.
Roger, thanks. I appreciate the help.
Thank you.
Beyond the Block, part of the Dialogue Podcast Network, is a weekly Come Follow Me podcast that centers the marginalized in Mormonism. Join Brother Jones and Brother Knox, a Black lifelong member and a queer convert theologian respectively, as they read the scriptures through the lenses of their identities and others in an effort to bring the culture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints closer and more in line with its theology, which centers Christ's justice and compassion. New episodes every Monday.
Dialogue Podcast Network.